I wasn't supposed to feel anything that afternoon. Not after the kind of day that had drained every last bit of patience out of me. Not with the heat sticking to my skin like a second layer of clothing. All I wanted was a few stolen minutes alone, just enough time to exhale the weight I'd been carrying since morning. Before I unfold the rest of this night, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It really does help more than you know. And if you're drawn into stories like this, I want you here for every one of them. Also tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Are you in a small town where the evenings fall slow and gentle, or in a city where the lights never quite go dark? The bathroom was quiet. Warm steam softened the edges of everything. The air smelled faintly of vanilla from my body wash, sweet and familiar. I was sure I'd turned the lock. Absolutely sure. My heartbeat was already uneven, a strange mix of frayed nerves and the comfort of privacy, when the moment split open with the soft, unmistakable creak of the door. I froze. The world froze with me. And then he did too. He stood in the doorway, chest rising like he'd taken the stairs 2 at a time, eyes wide, caught between shock and something else. His gaze didn't travel. It landed on my trembling hand, on the way my breath snagged halfway up my throat, on the heat I could feel burning in my cheeks. Wait, I managed, but it slipped out more like a gasp than a word. His fingers tightened around the doorknob. He didn't look away. Not once. The air between us changed. It got heavy, tense, almost electric, and from across that cramped room I could swear his heartbeat had fallen into step with mine. By all logic, I should have reacted, snatched a towel, turned my back, thrown out excuses so fast we could both pretend nothing had happened. Instead, something deeper moved first, because in his eyes, I didn't see disgust. I didn't see pity. I saw hunger, concern, confusion, and something dangerously close to want. My legs softened under me. My breathing sped up in little broken pieces. The steam suddenly felt thicker. He swallowed hard and managed. I didn't know you were. He stepped back an inch, but his hand stayed latched around the knob as if the rest of him couldn't quite follow. He looked like a man split in half, part of him fighting to respect my privacy, part of him chained to the doorway by whatever had just burst open between us. And for a split, traitorous second, I wished he wouldn't leave. Silence wrapped around us like fragile glass. I knew with absolute certainty the next move, his or mine, would crack something that wouldn't be easy to repair. Then he slid one foot forward, and the nature of the moment changed from accident to something we could no longer pretend wasn't real. What he said after that, and what we did not do, changed the way I saw him forever. He finally blinked, as if waking up inside his own shock. "I'm sorry," he stammered, words barely louder than the drip from the shower head. "I swear, I thought you were downstairs." The apology was there, but behind it, tucked into the way his voice caught, was something else entirely. He hadn't just walked in on me. He'd walked into something he'd been trying not to look at head on. He took one hesitant step back and gently pulled the door closed. Not a slam, just a careful, almost reluctant separation. The click of the latch echoed way too loud in that steamed-up little room, but the silence he left behind didn't go with him. It wrapped itself around me as I sank onto the edge of the tub, hands shaking, robe clutched to my body. My heart was still racing, but it wasn't just from embarrassment. That look, that split second between us, had cracked open a truth I'd been dodging for months. Whatever this was between us, it didn't start today. This was just the first time we'd both been forced to admit it. We'd always had a strange kind of closeness, comfortable enough to tease, close enough that we noticed when the other one got quiet, but always walking along an invisible edge. He was younger than me, but where others his age still carried that restless, unfinished energy, he had this calm that somehow made me feel less scattered, less erased. It was there in the way he remembered tiny details. The songs I hummed absent-mindedly while doing dishes. The fact that I always left the top book on the stack unread when I was overwhelmed. It was there in the way he handed me things, his fingers hovering just a little too long past necessary. In the way my name sounded when he said it, like he was saying a whole sentence with just those syllables. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was a harmless crush on his end, a lonely woman reading too much into simple kindness on mine. But lately the emptiness in my own life had gotten too loud to ignore. A house that functioned, but no longer felt like a place where affection lived. Nights where routine lay between my husband and me like another body. The kind of silence where nothing was wrong, but nothing was the right either. Maybe I ended up in that bathroom seeking more than just physical release. Maybe I was trying to feel anything other than numb, and maybe he opened that door at the exact moment I finally let the numbness crack. Hoot hours later, after the kids' shows had been turned off and the day's chores had been checked off the mental list, I found him in the living room. He was sitting on the couch, hunched slightly forward, elbows braced on his knees. When he heard my footsteps, he looked up. Everything in his expression was too raw to hide. Not shame, not really, worry, restraint, and that same spark I'd seen in the doorway. Only now, he wasn't trying to suffocate it. "I'm really sorry," he said softly. He looked like a boy in that moment and a man, both at once. "It's okay," I answered, the word catching somewhere behind my teeth. It wasn't okay. Not in the simple way we usually mean. What I really said was, "I'm not angry, I'm affected." He hesitated, eyes searching mine. "Are you all right?" How many times do we ask that in passing, expecting the automatic, "I'm fine." This time, the question dropped straight through my ribcage, because we both knew the honest answer. No, I wasn't. Not just because he'd seen what he saw, but because that afternoon had shown me something worse. How desperately I needed to feel seen at all. We stood there for a few seconds that felt much longer. Too close to be casual, too far to be innocent. Every brush of our hands, every held gaze from the past few months suddenly replayed themselves in a new light. Something had broken open, and neither of us had the strength, or the desire, to shove it back in. The next evening, the tension walked into the kitchen with us. We were cooking together, a thing we'd done 100 times without thinking about it. This time, every tiny sound felt exaggerated. The tap of the knife against the cutting board, the low surge of the stove igniting, the hush of fabric when our sleeves brushed. He reached for the same spice jar I was holding. Our fingers collided, just for a second, but there was no mistaking the way both of us felt it. "Careful," he murmured, steadying my hand as the knife slipped a little too close to my knuckles. The contact was light. Nothing anyone else would have noticed, but the shiver that ran through me was anything but small. "I've got it," I said, a little too fast. It wasn't the knife I was talking about. It was the situation, my own heartbeat. The space that was shrinking around us, inch by inch, night by night. My phone buzzed, a message from my coworker about him, wanting to meet later for a project catch-up. I watched his eyes flick down to his phone, then shift, just briefly, toward me. Something visibly tightened in his jaw. "Are you meeting her later?" I asked, my voice lower and sharper than I meant it to be. "Yeah, it's just work," he replied. But he didn't quite meet my eyes when he said it. That tiny avoidance splintered something in me. Jealousy flared, hot, irrational, unmistakable. The room seemed to narrow. I wanted to step back, put distance where sense said it needed to be. Another part of me wanted to grab his shirt and demand, "What are we doing?" We didn't move. Our breaths sensed again, too shallow, too heavy. The world outside carried on. A car passing, a dog barking, the oven timer beeping. Inside, everything felt like it had paused on a knife's edge. Forbidden wasn't some far-off line in that moment. It was the air between us. And I knew, if we took even one careless step toward it, there wouldn't be a graceful way back. Then came the night of the storm. Rain turned the city into blurred streaks of light and shadow. I wasn't supposed to be alone with him. But that's how it ended up anyway. The kids were at my mother's. My husband was working late. And there we were. The apartment wrapped in gray and gold light, the world outside muffled by the rain. He sat on the couch, a book open in his hands that he hadn't turned a page of. I held a mug of tea I didn't taste. Every few minutes, his eyes wandered to me. Every few minutes, I pretended I didn't notice. He shifted closer, not dramatically, just enough. Our knees nearly touched. "You're quiet tonight," he said. His voice had changed. That undercurrent of softness I'd learned to recognize as something more. "Just thinking." I murmured, my face hot despite the cool ceramic in my hands. His gaze sharpened. Without words, a question formed between us. Are we going to keep pretending? My hand slipped. Our fingers brushed. He let the touch linger a breath longer than politeness required. He didn't pull away. My pulse went wild. Outside thunder rolled. Inside, every nerve in my body fired at once. Just as I felt myself leaning toward him, drawn by something that felt older than this apartment, older than this week, older than my good intentions. The power flickered. The lights dimmed, then steadied in a softer glow. His face, half in shadow, half in city light, looked like something I could break my life on. And before I could decide whether I was about to, the front door creaked. A knock, a sound so small, and it cut clean through the moment like a blade. The knock wasn't from a neighbor. It wasn't a package. It was her, the coworker. She stepped in like she owned air itself. Her gaze bounced from me to him, hinting at questions she wasn't bold enough to ask. I thought we could go over a few things, she said lightly, stepping further into the room. He went rigid beside me. I didn't realize you were coming over tonight, he said. His voice sounded thin, like it was holding back more than it was letting through. The air around us turned brittle. He looked at me, really looked. And whatever decision he'd been avoiding seemed to land in his chest all at once. I need to say something, he said, voice low, no humor left. Time stretched. Every sound muted itself to make room for what came next. I've been feeling something for you, he said, looking straight at me, not at her, at me. The truth landed like lightning. Her smile faltered. My fingers dug into my own palms. All the glances, all the nearlies, all the we didn't do anything excuses. They finally had a name. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what she expected. But in that raw, vulnerable moment, I understood something I hadn't wanted to face. Forbidden isn't always about sneaking. Sometimes it's about standing under your own ceiling and telling the truth you've buried under 1,000 normal days. 2. I didn't want to lie anymore, he said. Not to you, not to myself. My lungs felt too small. What do we do with this? I whispered. He looked like he'd been replaying that question in his mind for weeks. I don't want to lose you, he admitted, but I can't go back to pretending this is nothing. Behind him, she quietly stepped back toward the door. I didn't realize, she said softly. Then, with more grace than I deserved, she left us right where we stood, the door clipped shut. His hand found mine, this time unmistakably on purpose. The tiniest touch and everything changed. Outwardly, nothing dramatic happened. We didn't rush into each other's arms. We didn't kiss in the middle of the room like a movie. We just stood there, hearts pounding, fully aware of the risk, fully aware of what we'd already set in motion, and both quietly choosing not to lie about it anymore. The storm outside softened to drizzle. Inside, the storm inside of me finally stopped pretending it wasn't there. Tuka later, after she'd gone and the rain had turned into a gentle tapping on the glass, we sat together on the couch, closer than before. Not tangled, not reckless, just close. His shoulder brushed mine. I leaned in, not because he pulled me, but because there was finally no point in pretending I didn't want to. I was so afraid of ruining everything, he said, voice barely above the sound of the rain. You didn't ruin anything, I replied. We did this to ourselves by not being honest sooner. He let out a breath that sounded like it had been waiting at the back of his chest for months. I think I've wanted this, us, for a long time, he said. Me too, I admitted, the words strange and right on my tongue all at once. We didn't have a plan that night. We didn't know what we'd tell other people. We only knew that something tender and real had emerged from the mess of unspoken longing, and we couldn't shove it back into hiding. What came after wasn't perfect. We had long talks, hard ones. I had to face what it meant for my marriage, for my life, for the quiet promises I'd once made to myself and slowly broken. In the end, I chose not to build something new on top of a lie. I didn't slip into an affair in the dark. I walked, shaking and honest, into the light of my own decisions. It hurt. It was complicated. But it was real. And if there's anything I took from all of this, it's that being truly seen, dangerous as it is, isn't the affair. Hiding who you are, what you need, And what's breaking inside you? That's the real betrayal. So let me ask you, have you ever been standing on that invisible edge, heart racing, knowing that one more step forward would change everything? Did you pull back? Did you fall? Did you stand there frozen, hoping the choice would disappear on its own? Tell me in the comments if you're brave enough, and if this story found something in you. Some ache, some echo. Please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It's the simplest way to support these truths being spoken out loud. Whatever comes next in your life, I hope you find a way to be honest with yourself first. The rest, as messy as it may be, will flow from there.